You're about to decide something small, doesn't matter what, and suddenly, one direction feels right faster, not because you checked, not because you compared, just flows. And it feels like you, like intuition, like experience, but it's not you, it's training. In episode 1, we saw how small decisions disappear from our lives. In 2, how the time between them shortens. But there's a third layer, deeper, not what you do, not how fast, but who you become in the process, without notice, without a clear moment, without choosing to change. And that's exactly why most people don't even notice it's happening.
Notice how you approach options today. Not dramatic decisions, everyday ones. How quickly something feels right, how quickly something else gets rejected, even before you really looked at it. And it's not because you're thinking less, not because you've become superficial, and definitely not because you've lost depth. This happens to smart people too, to critical people, to people who are aware of manipulation. Because what's changing here is not the ability to choose, but the environment in which the choice happens. Think of it this way. You can still walk in any direction you want, but one direction is already paved, and the others are full of trees. So technically, you choose the paved one. But actually, the choice was already made the moment the path was built. AI doesn't push you, doesn't convince, doesn't pressure. It simply arranges the space so that when you arrive to choose, something already feels ready. And the brain, like a brain, learns very quickly where it doesn't need to try.
This video isn't here to warn you, nor to open your eyes. It does something else. It quietly breaks down what cognitive training is happening here, not through tools, not through technology, but through internal habits. And this isn't a separate episode. It's another stage in the journey we're building here, a stage where we start to see the full picture.
There's a fundamental mistake in how we think about influence. We look for change in behavior, in choices, in outcomes. But real training happens before all of that. What AI trains is not what you choose, but how you approach the choice. Not the decision itself, but the feeling that leads to it. And when you understand this, something opens up. You can influence a person without changing a single decision of theirs, only by changing how the choice feels. Think of a forest. At first, there are no paths. There are trees, grass, options. But if enough people walk the same route again and again, a path forms. The grass gets trampled, the ground compresses, and walking there becomes easier. Nobody forced it, nobody marked it, but now walking on the path feels natural, and deviating from it feels like effort. And your brain works exactly like that. At first, you still check, compare, ask, but slowly, the system learns you, and you learn it, not through explanations, but through feeling, where it flows, where it's already paved, where you don't need to linger. And here happens the quiet transition, the transition that changes everything, from choice to confirmation. Not, what do I want, but does this feel right? The brain stops being an investigator and becomes an editor, not because of laziness, but because of perfect alignment with the path already created. First example, ChatGPT and the thinking framework. You open ChatGPT with a question, and the second it starts writing, there's already a framework, a direction, a way to look at the problem. You didn't ask for it, but it's there. And suddenly, thinking differently doesn't feel deeper, it feels like deviating from the path without reason. And your brain learns the first direction equals the efficient direction, not necessarily the right one, the efficient one. Second example, consumer choice. You're on Amazon, looking at several options, one of them with the orange tag, recommended for you, highlighted, standing out, feels personalized. Not because you checked them all, but because one got the paved path, and the others? Not worse, just not there.
And gradually, the brain learns what's not marked, probably not important. Third example, content and attention. You're scrolling on YouTube. The first 3 things scream, "This is for you." Strong design, shocked faces, yellow text, and below, something quieter. An interesting idea, but without a signal. And the brain already decided that quiet equals less worthy. Not because you checked, because you didn't get the sign that this is where the path runs.
And this changes feeling, not behavior. You don't say, "I'm not choosing this." You say, "This doesn't speak to me." And that's a dangerous distinction because it feels internal, authentic, me. But actually, it's the result of training to respond to what's presented and not to stay with what's not.
There's one principle important to take from here. Not as resistance, not as criticism, as clarity. AI doesn't replace your choice, it trains the way the choice feels. And like a path in a forest, it doesn't force you to walk on it, it simply makes it the easiest. And once the path is paved, other ways don't feel less right, they feel exhausting. And this is a critical point, because it explains why sometimes you say, "This just doesn't speak to me," when actually, you didn't choose not to choose, you simply didn't enter the path. Understanding this doesn't mean resisting and doesn't mean going back, it just means you recognize where the influence actually happens. If this series doesn't give quick answers, but does create order, there's a quiet link below to a toolkit that continues this line. Not as a promise, not as a solution, just as a quiet completion for those it's accurate for.
Just click the link, enter your email, and the system will send everything to you automatically. No pressure, no commitment, no noise. Let's keep going.
There's a strange moment that sometimes happens. You're trying to explain to someone why you did something, and you're looking for the reason, and suddenly you realize there was no reason. There was only, it felt right. And you can't say that out loud because it sounds like, "I didn't think." But the truth is different. You thought, it's just that the thought was already directed before you even started. And the real question isn't whether you chose correctly, but who paved the path where you felt at home, and when did it happen, and why didn't you notice? In episode 1, we saw how small decisions disappear. In episode 2, how the time between them shortens. And in this episode, we saw something quieter, how we train ourselves to feel comfortable only within certain paths. But all of that leads to a deeper realization that AI doesn't just change what we do or how fast, it changes who decides for us before we even notice a decision is being made. And that's exactly the question of the next episode. Why smart people let AI decide for them. Because each episode in this series doesn't stand alone. One path leads to the next, one habit shapes another, and one way of thinking slowly becomes familiar. Because the most dangerous influence is the one that feels like your own.
Want more game-changing AI tools like this? Hit follow, tag a friend, and drop the word "tools" in the comments. I'll send you the full list straight to your DMs. Keep pressing pause to grow smarter. See you in the next one.